certain parts of the internet. Some called Captain Marvel a villain.
All because of that deleted scene? Oh. So I've reacted to the real Loyal from Legal Eagle on the Jurassic Park video. I thought it was a pretty interesting video about the cost and the illegal stuff that happens. I've watched a few more videos as well. But oh, is Captain Marvel a villainess? What? She's pretty much one of my mains in the MCU, and you're gonna claim that she's the villain? I gotta hear this. I mean, he's a lawyer. I'm not going to badmouth him or anything, but I just find it interesting that an actual lawyer is, well, going to have his take on this. I mean, I've seen his take on the Sokovia records, which he admits is bullshit. And while I hate the Sokovia records of the superheroes being illegal and stuff, I really hate that shit. Just let superheroes be superheroes. Without them, things would have gone to shit a long time ago. I mean, he has different reasons, but whatever. Well, let's see what he has to say about one of my mains.
Thanks to Indochino for keeping Legal Eagle in the air and helping me look fly.
How about a smile for me, huh?
A smile?
Yeah. More fun to help you. Least you could do is give me a smile.
Crucially, he makes contact with the map that Captain Marvel is holding, pulls it down, and says something that might be interpreted as a threat. How about a smile for me? This guy is not a particularly nice guy, and crucially here, he has invaded Captain Marvel's space. Hey, Legal Eagles, it's time to think like a lawyer. And I really mean that this time because there are a lot of people engaging in quasi-legal analysis and really messing it up. Would you believe that the men who are complaining about Captain Marvel again are wrong about the law? I know it's crazy, but stick with me here. By the way, since we're dealing with a Marvel property, as always, there will be a post-credit scene at the end of this video. So a little background about Captain Marvel before we dive into the current ridiculous controversy that is surrounding this franchise. Captain Marvel came out last summer. It had slightly more controversy than normal because, as far as I can tell, and I wasn't following this closely, the lead superhero is a woman, and the lead actress, Brie Larson, said some semi-controversial things about racism and sexism in Hollywood.
I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. I don't hate white dudes. I'm just saying we need to be conscious of our bias and do our part to make sure that everyone is in the room.
That led some people, predominantly men, to boycott the film, which appears to have had no real effect because the movie did fine when it came out last summer. Fast forward to last week when the producers of the movie released a deleted scene where Captain Marvel more or less beats up a guy on a motorcycle.
What, no smile?
This led to a reaction on certain parts of the internet. Some called Captain Marvel a villain.
I've never seen that deleted scene. I mean, it reminds me of the deleted scene from The Force Awakens where Cobblepot? I forgot his name. This fat guy. He had his arm tore off by Chewbacca. But there was a deleted scene where that rude-ass guy gets his comeuppance.
Certain parts of the internet. Some called Captain Marvel a villain.
All because of that deleted scene? Oh my gosh. Okay, okay, I'll buy it. Where are you going with this?
Just see a villain. I see Captain Marvel written as a villain here.
The scene's awful, portrays Carol as a villain, that's why they cut it.
Carol Danvers is supposed to be the charismatic, endearing, and likable heroine of the film, but she behaves here like you'd expect a villain to behave. But apparently, feminists believe that women encounter guys like this all the time, and it's such a hardship.
And even conservative commentator Ben Shapiro gave this theory a signal boost.
Does she actually think that alienating people like me is going to be big box office? Of course.
Wait, what did that tweet say? Man, it is so empowering to watch a woman with superpowers physically hurt and then threaten to break a man, steal his motorcycle because he said something. Okay. People see it as she's acting like a villain, while this guy see it as it's so empowering because he's giving the rude guy his comeuppance. How did people react to the deleted scene of The Force Awakens when the guy has his arms removed again? Let's continue.
Boost.
Does she actually think that alienating people like me is going to be big box office? Of course not. She knows that. She's not completely dumb.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
The argument, as far as I can tell, is as follows. The deleted scene shows that a man on a motorcycle is rude to Captain Marvel. In a totally unprovoked attack, Captain Marvel effectively beats the hell out of the guy and steals his motorcycle. Instead of using her words, Captain Marvel engages in violence and is therefore the villain. The problem with this argument is that it is legally and morally incorrect. I don't begrudge these commentators too much. It's a clever attempt at being contrarian. It's just that the evidence doesn't really support this argument, and the attempts to shoehorn this movie, and in particular this deleted scene, into a particular conservative narrative just doesn't really work. Now, I'll note on the side that I'm not in a habit of commenting on this kind of popular minutia, but it just so happens that I was in the process of writing a practice exam for law students, a law school hypothetical, that involved a very similar fact pattern to what is portrayed in the deleted scenes. And as a second aside, I'm going to go through this clip in what some might consider excruciating detail, because that's what you do in law school. Legal analysis is mostly factual analysis, and so since this particular fact pattern was so close to what I was already working on, I thought it would be a great opportunity to talk about some of the legal analysis that law students and lawyers go through on an everyday basis. But let's examine the clip. All right, clearly a Los Angeles strip mall. I would recognize that architecture or lack thereof anywhere.
Nice scuba suit. You need a ride, darling?
Okay, so clearly here, Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, is reading a map or a newspaper. She's minding her own business, and some guy on a motorcycle has parked his motorcycle at the strip mall, and he has made an unwanted overture. Not the most polite thing to do, but not illegal either. And of course, I guess I have to point out that Captain Marvel is fully within her rights to completely ignore this gentleman and not engage with him in any way, shape, or form. That is also perfectly legal.
How about a smile for me, huh?
A smile?
Yeah. I'm offering to help you. Least you could do is give me a smile.
Okay, this is the crucial act that takes place that really changes the narrative entirely. The man on the motorcycle has parked his motorcycle. He's taken his helmet off. He stood up. He walked over to Captain Marvel. He put his hand on the map that she was holding and is clearly right next to her. You can see that his arm is sort of angled, which means that the distance between Captain Marvel and himself must be just a matter of inches, because it's not like he was reaching out with his hand in an extended fashion. He's reaching out his hand in a way that makes it seem like the map is directly in front of him. And crucially, he makes contact with the map that Captain Marvel is holding, pulls it down, and says something that might be interpreted as a threat. How about a smile for me? This guy is not a particularly nice guy, and crucially here, he has invaded Captain Marvel's space. This is a crucial distinction that we'll talk about in just a second, because in my opinion, I think that that meets the statutory definition of assault and battery.
I'm offering to help you. Least you could do is give me a smile.
So, his hand has left the map. He is still standing very close to her, but it appears that his arms are at his side, and Captain Marvel has taken the map, put it to the side, and she's about to confront this man.
How about a handshake? I'm Veers.
People call me the Don.
Wow.
Okay.
All right, so they both engage in what could be considered a consensual handshake, at which point Captain Marvel then begins to squeeze and, I guess, electrocute this guy. I actually didn't see the movie, so I don't know exactly what her powers are. But he's clearly in pain as a result of this grip that Captain Marvel has put on in this handshake.
Here's a proposition for you. You're gonna give me your jacket, your helmet, and your motorcycle, and in return, I'm gonna let you keep your hand. What, no smile?
Okay, so why do I think that this may qualify as assault and battery? Well, battery is a criminal offense involving the unlawful physical contact or touching of another person, which is either considered harmful or offensive. And battery is distinct from the separate crime of assault, which is the act of creating the apprehension of contact or unlawful touching. There are two flavors of battery in most jurisdictions. There's the crime of battery, which is prosecuted by the state, and then there's also the tort of battery, which is what you would accuse someone of if you wanted to sue them for civil damages in a lawsuit. But most of this discussion should apply to both. By way of example, California Penal Code Section 242 defines battery as any willful and unlawful use of force or violence upon the person of another. To meet this criteria, the prosecutor has to be able to prove that the defendant intentionally and unlawfully touched another person in a harmful or offensive manner, and the second element, which is that the defendant did not act in self-defense or in the defense of someone else. As any law student will tell you, even the slightest touch can be enough to satisfy the battery statute if it's done without consent or in a harmful or offensive way. In fact, you learn very early on in law school about the so-called eggshell skull theory, which is that if you make contact with someone who has a skull that is as thin as an eggshell, you're liable for those damages, even if the kind of touching that you do would not even hurt another person. But if it's enough to hurt someone with a very unusual condition, what we call the eggshell skull, I don't actually know if that is an actual medical condition or not, that's enough to make you on the hook for the damages that you cause as a result of your unconsented to touching, or battery in this case. And almost as important is that the contact requirement with another person is satisfied even if it's just touching their clothing, or if you touch something that is immediately connected to that person. So if you punched someone and you punch them through their shirt, now technically you haven't made contact with that person, but because the shirt is so connected to the person, punching them through a garment of some kind is enough to satisfy the touching of a person requirement. And crucially, that extends to things that are immediately connected outside of the clothing as well. So for example, if someone was walking down the street and they were holding a cell phone in their hand, if you went up to that person and smacked the cell phone right out of their hand, well, even if you don't actually make contact with the person's hand or their forearm, the fact that they were holding the cell phone and it fell out of their hand, that's enough to qualify as battery for the person. And if the victim saw you coming and was in apprehension of that contact, then you'd also be guilty of the crime and tort of assault as well. That's the apprehension of the physical contact. So not only would that count as destruction of property, it would also qualify as potentially the crime of assault and battery. We see that in the clip, the man on the motorcycle invades Captain Marvel's physical space. There was no reason for him to stand up from his motorcycle and walk the 10 to 15 feet away from the motorcycle into Captain Marvel's physical space. There was no reason for him to place his hands on the map or the newspaper that Captain Marvel had in her hands. Now, of course, no one's going to argue that Captain Marvel was physically harmed by this interaction, but that's not a requirement to the crime of battery. All that is required is the touching of something that is immediately connected to Captain Marvel. And I think that makes the statutory definition of assault. And the fact that he has invaded her personal space, that he's standing only inches away from her, saying something that could arguably constitute a threat against her, I think that qualifies as assault as well. So this guy's actions, I think, constitute the harmful or offensive touching of Captain Marvel. She is effectively the victim of being battered by this guy on the motorcycle. And the thing about being a victim of effectively battery and the apprehension of battery, assault, that gives you access to the legal justification of self-defense. Arguably, she was partially justified here. Now, those are, of course, the legal arguments, but even if we're going to talk about philosophy, I think morally speaking, it's the motorcycle guy who initiates force. And under almost any conception of morality, once someone has initiated force against you, you are privileged enough to use the defense of force against that person. So long as you don't escalate from using normal force into using deadly force, which it doesn't appear that Captain Marvel did here. Was Captain Marvel justified in taking this motorcycle and jacket? No, probably not. But Mr. motorcycle rider committed battery in the first place and deserved some of what came to him. And we can argue about how much force was justified and what kind of apprehension Captain Marvel was in and what kind of fear she faced from the sky, but certainly it is not as clear-cut as Captain Marvel is the villain or the motorcycle guy was completely innocent. It's never black and white. The legal reality is always gray. My guess is that some, but not all, of the force was justified. At the end of the day, this Tempest in a Teapot was really about a select few people who wanted to have a very idiosyncratic view of this deleted scene. And really, all of those mansplainers who wanted to make a clever point about Captain Marvel being the villain ended up becoming the thing that they hate most in this world. They are wrong on the internet. And as an aside, everyone recognizes that this scene is basically an homage to what happens in Terminator 2, right? This scene is shot for shot exactly what happens to Arnold Schwarzenegger in T2.
I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
No one called Arnold Schwarzenegger a villain in this scene. Everybody knows he's the hero. I mean, obviously he was the villain in Terminator 1, but he's the good guy in Terminator 2, and this scene from Captain Marvel is basically exactly the same scene over again.
Take it! Take it! Oh.
But I guess it's different if the superhero has a vagina. Now that Mr. Motorcycle Douchebag lost his jacket and helmet, he could really use a whole wardrobe makeover. Black leather is so 5 years ago. He could really use a slim-cut, fully custom suit from Indochino, with the rack to a physical store and have a style out, or use the link in the description.
Okay. First, before I go over, we're gonna... hang on. Objection, you didn't address... Okay, so that scene, deleted scene, was an homage for Terminator 2, a movie I didn't watch, the beginning anyway. It's clearly an homage, except Arnold Schwarzenegger is the one-line spewing hero. Well, about to be a hero. Everyone's fine with it. But when Captain Marvel does it, everyone loses their minds? What the fuck has humanity gone into? Okay. So, obviously, even with or without the deleted scene, she's got the motorcycle and some proper clothing in the end. So, there's that. But it's hard to believe that somebody's going apeshit over the deleted scene. I mean, I'm not going to say that guy was innocent and stuff. I mean, that he had some rude moments. It's like, hey, oh, come on. And they take it a little bit further to the point where Captain Marvel... I mean, while watching that scene or while the guy was talking about it, it just couldn't help but remind me that of some other scenes where a villainess kind of does that thing. If Captain Marvel was the villainess, the guy would have died, and she would have had a sadistic smile on her face or something. A sadistic smirk, like she doesn't kill, she just enjoys it. But it reminds me of Cinder Fall getting some clothing in season 6, where she killed an innocent woman off screen to get clothing and the money. But apparently the real lawyer, I'm not entirely sure, but I think this guy pretty much makes a point that Captain Marvel is not really a villain in that deleted scene. And besides, it's a deleted scene, aka it's not in the movie. It didn't happen. I mean, it could have happened, but it didn't. Why is everyone going apeshit about deleted scenes? I mean, I'm pretty sure that nobody goes apeshit over the Lion King deleted scenes. Like, what the heck? I don't give a shit about politics, but this scene right here, that's just ridiculous. And Terminator 2 did that? Really? Really? Nobody bats an eyebrow. But Captain Marvel? Everyone loses their minds. I thought that the real lawyer was just going to go over the illegal actions of what Captain Marvel did. But instead, it was the controversy surrounding the deleted scene. I thought I was going to have to be rolling my eyes or listening to some interesting facts. And I am listening to interesting facts. But I'm not sure if I rolled my eyes through the video. But it's for different reasons. That's for sure. Oh my gosh. What has humanity come to lately? I mean, why are we going over it? Why is there controversy surrounding the deleted scene to begin with? I mean, it's just a delete it scene. And besides, there were far worse things, like the first Alien. There are far worse deleted stuff, deleted concepts, deleted scenes out there. I mean, the deleted concept. The first Alien movie, it was about to have the alien rape Kane. And there were other concepts, like the ending where the alien talks. I mean, that's pretty stupid. Where at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter, and nor should it matter. I mean, I really enjoyed Captain Marvel, and in the end, in actuality, she made the right call not to beat the crap out of the guy. I mean, sure, we want to beat the shit out of some rude assholes and stuff. But just directly attacking them, sometimes you gotta let a few things go, because if they get to you, well, it may have some damage, whether it's minor or major, but yeah. Okay. That is all. Let's just move on. Okay? Let's just move on. Let's just have a soda, have some good foods, watch some funny videos. Let's just not get into this kind of thing. let's just not complain about the deleted scene anymore. Okay? Let us all be friends here. Subscribe to each other's channel. Subscribe to my channel. Let's just get along. There's no reason to complain about this scene. It's minor. You shouldn't make big deals out of minor things. We'll be fine.